The transitions from the bottle, the product, to a different setting repeats throughout the film. Is this more of a function of a perfectly framed product placement, seamless editing, or a combination of both?
Good question. So it's a combination of all those things. So we're doing, as we talked about before, we're doing a lot of testing with mobile phones beforehand on this, such as, for example, this film here. We're just in the bar. This is Valentin here, the director, holding the bottle. We're trying to design the shot so we can come around. And what I've been told by the VFX supervisor, Guillaume, who's come with us from Mathématique, which is a really great post-production house in Paris, is that the bottle here has to fill the frame. Not fill the frame, but it has to go from top to bottom. That is sort of my job on this shot. Has to fill this. I'm not operating this shot in the end. We're doing it with Steadicam. And we did it with an alien rig, which is you'll see in the behind the scenes photos, is the roll cage. And this allows us to get the camera around corners a bit more and have the post horizontal, the Steadicam post. Instead of being straight, we can roll the camera and the camera will stay leveled. So it allows us to find different heights. So the reason the transitions here, so the reason this transition works is because we managed to get the bottle placed exactly like this in the film. So it fills the top to bottom, right? Like this. This allows the post-production to rotoscope, which means frame by frame, all of this new world. We're calling this the new world, and this is the old world here with the bar. And then, as you come out of it, they're using a sort of effect to make it more seamless. And then we're into it. And how we're doing this shot here is we're using a Q-take system on set, which is a playback system that allows us to overlay a previous shot onto a monitor. And this, it's like a grade overlay, so like 20% gray. And this allowed us on set to frame up the previous day's shot from the pub, which is this one, and then find it in the bodega, line up the frame exactly. It was slightly Dutched, try and line it up on the letters, and then camera pulls away, bottle goes away as well. And then the reason we do this as precisely as possible on set is it gives the post-production the best chance of doing it well. So they're not having to resize the shot too much because they're trying to zoom in to stabilize it and match it. We also shot a higher frame rates occasionally, so it allows them to retime the shot back to 25 seconds, so they have extra frames that they can take in and out. And then the transitions here, this is the same thing. We're using the Q-take system. I have to note some camera trick or some film magic or whatever you want to call it. Here, this shot in reality is our character here is moving the bottle. She extends her arm, but she holds that bottle dead still. So at that point, it gives the camera operator the best chance of filling the frame. We kept this guy here very still. He's not moving throughout that whole shot. We fixed him dead still so we can go straight through his arm and find the camera can fit through there all the time. And then we come to the party. And then we come to the party and we basically overlay this footage so that we can find the bottle is coming from the same position. So little things like that, we try to sort of make, and there's actually transitions later in the film where we tried things like doing things in reverse, but it always doesn't look right when we did playback on set. So, for example, this transition here is replaced backwards because we're moving into a bottle. To get that precise and that close to a bottle is very hard when you're flipping over someone. And that's achieved with starting backwards.
3, 2, 1, action.
And rotating the camera. You watch that camera rotating. And the camera's rotating so that it can stay. Well, I think because it was cool. And so I was controlling it via a remote control on an iPhone. I just pressed play on the AR system we set the roll position, the start position and the end position. We set the speed of the roll, and then I as soon as we click turn over and we call turn over, I hit it, and there's a bit of delay, and we just do it a bit of timing. But you see, they're doing nothing, right? They're totally still. But in the previous shot, in the later shots, they're all moving as much as they want.
That might mean forgive and forget.
But we found that because we were reversing this shot in order to find the transition perfectly to get into that bottle, when they would move their arms, it would be like this. It would look very unusual because the speed at which you're hitting someone to say hi. So it was this process on set where we're saying, okay, how do you do anti-gravity kind of hugs? You're going to have to do fast pushes and then back. But it just didn't look right. So we keep them still. We know that they're moving from this shot. And then we go straight in. And I don't think, unless I had told you, you would have said there was something weird about it. So we were able to go straight in, what appears to be straight into a bottle.
Earlier you let me know this was actually shot on digital and just given a more filmic look. What did you do in camera to achieve this, even though it was shot digitally, as well as your communication with the colorist to achieve this look?
So we shot on the Mini LF, which was the mini version of the Arri's large format camera, which was 2 Alexa sensors stitched this way. And we thought this would be an interesting choice because we were told that this project might end up on a massive screen in Times Square and we might need some more resolution than an all mini. I was used at this point to shooting 1600 ISO on an Alexa Mini at whatever resolution, to try and introduce a sort of texture to the image before the grade. I tested noise. I tested ISO in a testing room before we shot this at 2000, 2500, asked around a bit, and settled on the idea that shooting 1600 as per the original Mini sensor, was sort of enough to get it to a place where it had a bit of grain. And again, well, as I will later answer about Archer and Val, I knew that Archer was grading this and that we would be introducing a film grain to it already. So I knew I didn't have to achieve absolutely everything in camera, and that it was more like an intermediate process rather than I have to achieve everything in camera because I don't trust the grading process is going to get it right. So I might have done it differently if that had been the case. So we shot 1600 through the whole film, and I found that because the sensor was 2 Alexa sensors stitched vertically, I found that 1600 really introduced a nice texture to the image, and that I could have even gone further in terms of keeping the ISO at 1600 but underexposing the image a bit more, using a LUT that would correct for it on set. So you're seeing a good, well-exposed image on set, but the sensor is recording a slightly darker image, therefore underexposed. And I realized this on the roof when we were shooting some extra shots that aren't in the film. For example, this shot here had the most beautiful image even through the viewfinder, where it was starting to get extremely dark, and I was shooting wide open, no ND, 1600 in the camera. I knew there was still image sensors information there, but I thought, wow, this camera is performing so well and so nicely in this really deep shadow area, underexposed. And that sort of has taught me that I think I can go further by doing this for real on every type of shot. So that's sort of what we did. This was the colorist I talked about before who introduced Val and I. We'd worked together on ASAP Ferg and Marcellus Wallace, like the Prince Wally film, both shot on film. And this colorist I knew was very good with, there was 2 things. I knew Archer was very good at mixing digital into a film look, both by using grain overlays and glow and the highlights and other sort of techniques. And I knew Valentin and him had worked together on this quite a lot, shooting digital things for Adidas and things and getting this look already. So interestingly, because I knew Archer quite well and he had graded, I think, 5 or 6 of my other projects, we didn't have such a huge discussion on how the grade would look on this particular film, because we already had a sort of understanding between Val and Archer and myself that we liked the particular look. And that's very lucky that none of us were fighting each other too much on how the film should look.
How was the shot at 7 seconds achieved, as well as the type of lens he used?
This shot is achieved using this modern boroscope called a Lauer 20, made by Lauer, and it's a 24mm, and it fit full frame, which was great for our Alexa LF, which is a full frame camera. Full frame meaning full frame 35mm stills, horizontal. So it's this sort of boroscope here, and if you look at it in relation to a Sony camera, it's very small. So here is a sort of small solution. That's what we used, and we learned, Val and I used it on a film, on this film, Face Out Berg. But we're testing it here before the shoot. We had the art department they made a replica bottle with a wider throat so that the lens could fit through, because it wouldn't fit through the normal whiskey bottle made by the company. We then also had the challenge of lighting this, so liquids always have to be backlit. So that meant that there had to be light hidden directly behind the bottle. But when you're pulling out of a bottle into a wide shot, that's pretty tricky. So you'll see the light actually in the reflection here is disappearing, but it was been painted out because we had the gaffer here with a little 150 dado or 150 Ari directly behind the bottle, and as we pulled out of the bottle like this, he's getting out of the shot with the light, and it was always caught in every shot. It was impossible to hide it completely with keeping the light in the liquid, but also disappearing the light. The other thing that was difficult about this shot is that a Lauer is an f/14 lens, so that meant that I had to bring in my lighting quite a bit to enhance the lighting, to increase the exposure on the set, and that was more tricky than I thought, because normally I might have had about T5.6 in this scene on a digital sensor, but I needed at least 3 more stops of light for this particular shot. So I kind of prepared for that by having one source bigger outside, so series of M40s, which you can see in the behind the scenes, instead of maybe M18s outside, so just having a bit more stop, because I wanted to avoid a situation where I had to spend an hour relighting for this particular shot. I have to say that it did take me maybe half an hour, because I just kept thinking, wow, I need more and more and more than I thought. Yeah, so that's how we achieved that.
There's a whip pan 16 seconds into the film. How difficult is it to nail that, and what's its specific purpose?
So the whip pan was done in camera using just using a normal O'Connor 2575 head, which is this, and I think the effect was not overthought in any way. It's just something that was an interesting way of breaking up the handheld and the Steadicam of the scene. So I said, okay, great, let's try it. I didn't know if it would really fit the style, but I think it's quite interesting in the end. In answer to how difficult it is, it's not overly difficult. It's not the most difficult shot I've ever had to do, but when you feel the pressure of a schedule, sometimes, it can be tricky. I mean, what I would do for a whip pan kind of thing, if I have to land on a specific frame, I'm using the crosshair of the viewfinder, and I will basically just keep doing the movement, so I can kind of introduce a bit of muscle memory to it. Yeah, and then just a little bit of luck, really, in the end, that you nail it.
The lighting at 38 seconds looks great. How is that set up and lit?
So the lighting of this shot here is done with two things. So there's this 18 here. This is an 18K. When we were on the recce, I said I suggested that we have maybe an M90, which is a 9K, coming through the tree, and I asked the gaffer whether he thought that would be enough coming through a tree, and he said no, we must stick with the 18K, which was a great decision because it really worked in the end. We then hazed it up so that it would do this, and then I think we might have put a bit of diffusion on the head there. Yeah, we've got a diffusion on the head there, so like a half diffusion, and that's on a small crane, and the base is there. We could have put it on a stand, but the stand would have got up to maybe here. So having that on that height was just great, because it just gave us this moon impression, this angle that you couldn't get from a stand, especially with the size of the windows, which were up to here, sort of 9 meter windows. So it's important to have something that's above the frame so that you don't see the light in the shot, because when it's further away from the windows, let's say you've got a window here and you've got a stand here, you start to move it away from the window because you need it to be far away from the window so it's not too close. In relation to the window, it's now lower than it was here. You'll start seeing it in the frame much lower. So it's important, I think, always when I can, to try and get the height of a small crane, to get that lift above the frame and to get the angle in a big wide shot. And then on the inside we used helium balloons filled with tungsten bulbs, and this would give a sort of soft glow to everyone and allow us to shoot in every direction we wanted and not have to keep moving stands. It was such a big room too, you couldn't put stands around, because you'd shoot there, and then there's a standing shot. And I knew from the previous way we shot with Val that doing that would have just been killer for the shoot. The advantage of having these balloons is you can put them up, they get a beautiful top light, you haven't got stands anywhere, and you just can keep rolling. And you don't break the flow. As a DP, you're not breaking the flow of the director and everyone else on set. And then we also used Asteras here to provide like a different color palette to the room, because these tungsten bulbs obviously just had tungsten in them, they weren't LED. So we decided to try and have a bit of red on these Asteras, and with a little program on them so they would move. In the end, these helium balloons were actually much deeper than I expected, and so it was a problem for us to have them there. You can see them in some of the frames, and that's what's providing this soft top light above her in that shot. But it was tricky because on these when we're using a wide angle, it was really hard for me to frame out these balloons because they were so edgy to the top of the frame. Let me see if I can catch it. No, they've cut it out. But yeah, so here's the red of the Asteras, and then on the top of the head you can feel the tungsten. So we dimmed that down to get the warmth out of the dimming. And then this is the 18 here coming in. No diffusion, so you still got that sort of sharp shadow here. And then there was a bit of diffusion in front of the camera, the lens to diffuse that, to just generally diffuse everything. And then of course we used practicals. You can see the lamp there. We used many practicals in the shot as well, and that's what the balloons were motivated by, was practicals. So saying that this light here was doing all of the light on the faces and stuff, but it's actually the balloon coming from above that's doing it. And here's the red of the steerers. I learned this balloon trick when I was an electrician, when we were shooting in the Natural History Museum. Big, wide open spaces that you need to light can really benefit from when you have big floating soft sources. You don't have to use direct sources on tall stands and things. It has the advantage of being soft and being able to hide it, and you can shoot this way, this way, this way, and it's this beautiful soft source that floats above the set. And so when I was a DP, I was aware that we could still use these things. And I used it first a few years ago, about 4 years ago, and when I was shooting a small ballet film at the Royal Opera House,
Attitude upstage.
where we were shooting at night in their main rehearsal
It's on the
space.
flash. It's on the flash.
And we were shooting, and there was mirrors everywhere. So of course, this would be a clear reason where you would benefit from not using stands, but also having a beautiful light. And then I used it later in a film up in Scotland, shooting big scenes in a stately home, and I used it here to light the table again, so we could shoot continuously. And then, especially for outside, I was able to float a big, soft, directional light above everyone here for these scenes.
The final shot in the film is of these birds flying around. Is that more spur of the moment and more of your decision to shoot that?
We saw some birds. We were sort of shooting the two lead actors there, and kind of turned around and saw this and grabbed it. I mean, the amount of films I've been on where we see birds, grab it, just get it. It's too many to count. So it was pretty. But these worked really well for the way he was looking into the distance. So he had something in the film to cut to rather than just a wide shot of nothing happening. So I'm glad it made it in.
Rapid fire questions. 3, 2, 1, go. So how closely did the final result resemble what you had in mind?
It did resemble it.
That's good. Do you have any specific shots that didn't make the cut that you would have liked to see?
Yeah, there was a tracking shot in the party scene where we had the rays of light coming in and people in the way, and it felt like a movie, but it didn't make the cut.
Oh, that's sad. How similar was your vision to Valentin? And did you have any specific disagreements about the look of a shot?
I've already signed an NDA, so I can't tell you about all the fights we had.
Perfect. Lastly, what was your favorite section or part of the film?
We didn't have too many disagreements. My favorite section was on shooting was probably the rooftop scene. There was this shot of the woman I've already shown you, where I was shooting on this new camera, and it was just an amazing experience to be there, witnessing the dusk and the depth of field of the camera.
Great to know. Thank you for your time today, Hunter. It was a pleasure to ask you some questions about this film, and I'm sure everyone watching is very appreciative. All right, and I know you're about to go on a shoot for another company, so good luck with that.
Thanks. Sweet. All right, see ya.
All right, see ya.
Aren't you glad you asked me to do this and you've had to listen to me talk for an hour?